Show. As always, Scott Carson, excited to be here with you today. Today's topic comes directly from one of our note students out there who is evaluating a portfolio of 26 notes. We're really excited for her. And she had a question. It's like, Scott, I have got the collateral files sent to me from the seller, and they all look completely different. What the heck am I supposed to have? And we've done a due diligence class on this before, and she's done a great job. And I just want to go through kind of what you need to have in your collateral file due diligence checklist and what you need to be looking for in your collateral file. So it starts with the basic stuff, okay? The collateral file, the collateral file, that's a third of the due diligence. We've done it. You're going to do easy due diligence on the value of the property. You're going to do it a little bit on the bar by looking at socials and looking at, the servicing notes, stuff like that. But when it comes down to the collateral file, this is really the most necessary items that you have, because that's really what you're buying. And I've bought notes where the collateral file had one piece of paper in it, and then all the way up to one that was a full banker's box for just one loan file with so many things on it. So you really want to have some basic stuff in there. Otherwise, you're going to have a hard time. Now, the one file, one that I bought that had like one piece of paper in it, I had a copy of the electronic copy, which sufficed enough for what I did. Plus, it was a vacant property. It wasn't that big a deal. But if it was a occupied property and the borrower is going to fight you want to make damn sure you've got everything in that collateral file that you need. And it starts off with, first and foremost, having a copy of the notes. Yes, you can get away with a lost note affidavit. Rarely are courts kicking a foreclosure out because you don't have the original note these days. A lost note affidavit basically says you've got a copy of the recorded copy of the note, and that works fine. Okay, got to have copies of all the assignments of mortgages. That's basically an assignment of mortgages when, let's say, Chase Bank originates the note and they sell it to ABC Bank. ABC Bank sells it to Gemini. Gemini sells it to me. You would need to have 3 assignments of mortgage that are signed and notarized from one seller to the next. Okay. And along with the assignment of mortgages, you need to have allonges, which is just a one-page document. It's basically endorsing over the right to collect. So for every assignment, you've got to have an allonge. They're 2 separate documents. Okay. You have a copy of the deed of trust. This is often you can pull out of the county records to make sure that the ownership matches up with who's on the loan. All right. Now, if a contract for deed, you're going to want to look at the actual contract as well, because the deed is not going to match. The deed should be with the seller of the actual contract for deed. The borrower will not have their name on title or on the deed until the actual contract is paid in full. So anyway, assignment of mortgages, allonges, copy of the loan docs, the mortgage, and then a copy of the deed of trust. Now, additional items that you're not always going to get, but are so well worth to look at. I mean, we have found all sorts of interesting things in the collateral files. I have found copies of deed and liens where the borrower's already signed the property over and walked away, keys to the house, hardship letters, Polaroid photos of the interior. What else we found? Insurance checks that were made out to the previous lender that were never cashed. Hardship letters, the borrower is outlining that they want to stay in the house. They can do a loan modification, a trial payment plan, and the previous seller just ignored it. Or they're willing to do a short sale, and the file was so big because there were so many short sale documents in there as far as taxes returns and bank statements and stuff like that. I mean, just the documentation from the borrowers alone is well worth it. That's why we always say, you can look for the original loan application. If that's provided, great. And by that, that's the loan application 1003. Or the financial documents in the contract for deed. Somebody has to fill out, showing what they're making, what type of money, where they work at, how long you've done it for, what type of cash they have, what kind of savings, any other schedule of real estate. That's a very important thing. Because if somebody puts on their loan application that they have other real estate in their name on the LLC that's borrowing the money, that works as a bargaining chip for you when you're negotiating on a deed in lieu or a foreclosure. Like, listen, you've got these other 139 properties. You're not paying on this one. Just sign this one over to me and walk away. Otherwise, I'm going to slap a judgment against all your other properties. If you ever sell those, I'm going to get paid. So take care of it now versus later. Okay. You do want to look for the original copy, the original title folder or copy of the title policy from the original closing. Remember, the title policy is still in place, but it's still good to have in case if something pops up along the way. You want to try to have a copy of the original closing docs or the HUD one, the settlement statement. You're not always going to get that from when the property was sold, but it's still good to have. You want to look for proof of insurance. This is important. The borrower should be providing proof of insurance along the way. Make sure it's up to date with the current borrower. is the borrower is paying for this, and it's made out as the insured is the mortgage company, because you want to correct that once you buy that note and have it, you being the payee in case something happens. It's always good to do a quick search and see how much in taxes are owed. Oftentimes lenders or sellers will provide a copy of the tax assessor's office showing how much is owed or not owed. It's still worth to double check it on your own self to make sure that nothing hasn't gone to tax foreclosure or anything like that. And then also at the assessor's website too, that the name on the property matches up with the name on the note. That's usually a red flag if it's changed. Like I was working with another student, Dimitri, we were looking at some stuff in Florida, and the name on the assessor's website was different than the note. And as we looked, we dove back a couple years on the county records. We were able to find that the HOA had foreclosed and then sold off the property to somebody else. So it wasn't even worth pursuing on that. That note was basically gone. Okay. You want to ask also for servicing notes. This isn't going to be part of your collateral file, but you want to go ahead and ask for servicing notes. So you can see the inbound, the outbound calls, the notes taken by the servicing company. If they don't have anything, or if being self-service, that's also kind of a red flag for the most part. Now, of course, the seller could have not had the servicing company do any type of borrower outreach collections. That's kind of what happens sometimes. But it's good to ask, hey, I need to see the servicing copy of their notes. I also need to see a updated servicer updated payoff amount. And then also I need to see payment history. Because if you ever get called into court on a foreclosure, they're going to ask for you to proof up on payment history. And if you've got those documents, that does away with their ability to say that the payments weren't collected. Okay. If the person's filed bankruptcy, the borrower's filed bankruptcy, you should ask for a copy of the PACER report, the bankruptcy filing. You're probably not going to get it. You may get it. If it isn't a file, great. If it isn't, it's worth going to pacer.gov and downloading a copy of it. It's pretty cheap, but it's going to give you all the information like on a 1003 application, but sharing where they're at up to date. Another thing, going back to the 1003, you can see where they work. It should give you a couple numbers. The most important thing about the financial numbers is it's giving you like date of birth, social security numbers and stuff like that, that if the servicer doesn't have that stuff already, you need to have that. Okay, so that's one big thing. It's so important. I see a lot of people make this mistake is they get ready to buy a note, and it was an owner finance note, and the guy that originated the note, that's selling the note now, he was self-servicing and he doesn't have the information. He didn't collect on the social security number, didn't collect on date of birth. He doesn't have the information available, which it makes it really difficult for you to start the foreclosure process or get any type of judgment or anything against that borrower. Also, it's also important to ask the seller, hey, where are they at in the legal process if it's a foreclosure? Do you have any updated notes from the attorneys? Oftentimes there's a legal log that's kept on what the attorneys are doing. If they don't have that or don't provide that, I then will ask, well, can I speak to I need for you to make a formal introduction via email to the attorney so I can talk with them about this loan file, see where they're at in the process, making sure that their bills have been paid. Because I've had it in the process in the past before, we bought a note and the seller hadn't been paying the tax bill or the legal fee. So we had to pay the attorney fees for the last year. Otherwise, the attorney was just going to cancel the foreclosure and then we have to start over again. So that's not what you want. That's why it's so important to talk with the attorney. Make sure that if they're about to foreclose, that you can retain them as counsel. Some don't want to deal with new sellers or new note buyers because they're just too busy. And this is it's a very important thing. If you can keep it with the same attorney, that's great. I just was able to talk an attorney into keeping me on, even though there's only like 2 months left in the foreclosure, because there's only 2 months left. I was like, listen, I'm glad to pay you this. I've got all this information. I've got all the payment information, the payoff, the judgment amount, all that good stuff. Okay. And that's what you want to ask. Hey, the attorney will talk to you. You want to request all the filings, the judgment filings, the foreclosure filings, and get a copy of that. Make sure everything's been processed and is proceeding. Don't take the fact that the seller says, oh, there's an estimated foreclosure date of January, and you don't see anything on the calendar, don't see any documents that proof up that. Okay. If the borrower's never done any sort of a loan modification or trial payment plan, you want to see a copy of that loan modification or trial payment plan. Executed copies, not a copy that the servicer sent out. You want to see something that comes back, because if the borrower has not signed off on it, it's not an enforceable loan mod. It doesn't mean it's done. It means the borrower can stop off and stop paying, but if the servicer started to collect on behalf of those payments, it shows that they've accepted it, and it may be a good thing, maybe a bad thing. Okay. Look for hardship letters too. This is one of the things that I look for with a seller. I'm sorry, the note borrower on a file as sending hardship letters, writing letters, what's going on. We found we were looking at making a purchase on one note, and you could see that they stopped paying like in March of 2020. And we looked in the collateral file and we saw the borrower's son had committed suicide, and he'd lost his job, dealing with depression. I'm like, I can't, I don't feel good foreclosing on something like that. Now you also see things where there's been a hardship letter, and there's been multiple hardship letters when the note's been sold 3 or 4 times, and the borrower's filled out all this hardship paperwork trying to do a loan mod or a TPP of some sort. So look for that, because that's often a sign like, hey, this borrower wants to stay. Let's work to get them back on track if they fill up hardship letters. Okay. And then, of course, if you can get, it's basically worthless, especially if it's been beyond a year. But if the previous appraisals in there, that's good. Look at the appraisal. Maybe there's colored copies. You can see the interior of the property, what it once looked like. That gives you a bit of an idea. Maybe there's a previous MLS listing somewhere that's not going to be in the collateral file, but maybe you can find that to see the interior view. And then also, oftentimes sellers will provide a copy of the title update. It's an O&E report, ownership and encumbrance report, basically to owner report going back to see if there's been any ownership changes, or what's sitting on title, or not title. That might clog it up, that popped up since the loan was originated. So those are the things to take a look at. I mean, your collateral file is really what you're buying. I mean, the pen in this case is much mightier than the hammer. And when you're holding a collateral file in your hands, it can seem very intimidating. One of the things that we've done when we have one-on-one students is we always give them some collateral files to look at, to take the time to flip through them, not read it. Trust me, it can be very boring reading collateral file. You're not going to read the mortgage from start to finish, but like on one file, the collateral file that was sent over by the seller had 1,700 pages on it. Now it was really 850 pages that had been copied twice, scanned twice, but it had all the documents from the original mortgage, all the servicing notes. It had all the statements and pay stubs, or the payment stubs that were sent out, any new payoff dates, when the servicing was transferred, as the loan was sold 3 times, that was included. So it's really valuable to take a look at it. Sometimes your collateral files that you're looking online are pre-scanned from the previous seller, so it may not have new updated information. So ask, hey, there's an assignment of mortgage missing on it. Can you get this fixed? Like we bought a note in Houston, Texas, that the assignment was missing, and it took another 90 days for them to get the assignment from one of the previous sellers signed and sent over to us, and then recorded before we record our assignment. So that's the important thing, guys. Look what's going on. You like I said, you may find things in there that the seller will tell you exactly that they want to stay or they want to go. You may see exactly what's going on. It's really the story behind the story with the collateral files. And it's, a lot of it can be boring reading, but once you flip through, you understand that's the mortgage. That's pretty normal. The 1003 application, where do they work at? What do they do? That's probably what they're working at now. Like I've seen, we bought a contract for deed where the borrower was working at Dollar General. Well, we went to Dollar General and we found that that's where they were still working at, but we knew that they were making like $12 an hour, and the husband was making like $15 an hour. Well, that's, right then and there, that's a limited amount of what they could actually afford in a modification agreement or a trial payment plan. So use the collateral file to your benefit. If you're buying a portfolio of notes, there's often companies that will take a look at them for you, somewhere around $150 a pop. But they're just going to look for the basics of what you need. They're not going to tell you, oh, guess what? The seller in here had 50 grand in an IRA account, or 200 grand in a savings account, or their 401k. They're just looking for the staples. Like I said, the assignments, the allonges, copy of the note deed of trust. Those are the big 4 staples you need to have. The rest that you can get, that's gravy. That's awesome. Some of the stuff you can find out by looking at county records. Sometimes you can even go back to the original title company if it's not too far past, and get the title company to pull a copy of the closing docs from that mortgage when it was originated, if it's not too far back. And usually if it's beyond 24 to 36 months, they're not going to bend over backwards. It's on microfiche and they've got to send somebody to go get it. But sometimes you can find this stuff, and it makes sense. And if you see an old appraisal in there, maybe you can pick up the phone and call the listing or the agent on it and see if they can get an appraiser. Or update the appraisal or the BPO if that's in the collateral file. Sometimes that's provided during the due diligence period. But like I said, guys, your collateral file is your best friend. If you're buying a bunch, take a look at them. And my advice to my students is working through 26, because some would have some documents, the others would have other documents, and wouldn't have them as there. Just start making a list. Start making a checklist of the things that you need. And you got a spreadsheet is really easy with different columns. Okay, this address, this address, this address. What do I have? What do I not have? What do I need? And that way it makes it easy when you're buying a portfolio to send it back to say, okay, I need these servicing notes from this. I need this updated payoff. I need this information. I need proof of insurance on these 5. You provided on these 15, but I don't have it on these other 5. So that's the thing to keep in mind, is it's not meant to be confusing. It's just a different thing of looking at. And once you start looking at enough collateral files, they will blur together and you'll know exactly what to look for. You'll know how to piece together assignments and allonges and going from there. So highly encourage you to do that. It's a great way to start and understand what's in the collateral file by looking at them, making more offers, getting more your hands dirty, looking at due diligence files, and the collateral files will help you. If you need help, hey, oftentimes there are maybe part-time or retired title workers that will often come in and are looking for part-time work that can come in and help you evaluate things and do it on the cheap for you. But usually a collateral review file is going to cost you about $150 per file. So most I've ever paid for a collateral file was like 40 to 50 grand. We were buying a couple hundred files, and the seller and I agreed that we had a third party that would evaluate them. And it worked in our favor because the third party went in there and would classify the files as either A, B, or C, or D. A was that they were perfect, had a lot of information. B was okay, maybe a couple things that could be fixed. C, they needed some corrections. At D, they were missing a lot. Anything was a C or D, I had the right to swap out those loans for new loans, and we had a 90-day period after closing to swap out those loans, which was with new assets. So that worked really, really well when you start buying some trades. But you're buying a one-off note, hey, a collateral file should not be difficult. Here's a big kicker. If a seller will not provide you a copy of the collateral file until after you fund, run. Do not close. Do not do the deal. You have the right to evaluate the collateral file before closing. If they won't send it to you until after closing, they're trying to do something shitty. And you don't, homie, don't play that, right? All right, everybody. So if you need some ideas on help with people, we've got vendors that will help you out with that. But I highly encourage you to dig into it, look at a collateral file, make a list of all the documents in there, and you'll feel a lot better once you've done it a couple times. You won't have to pay somebody to go do it. So go out, take some action, everybody, and we'll see you at the top. Bye.